Hi, everybody. Welcome to Act Now. I'm Julianna Forlano. Joining me today for the headlines, Ben Dixon of the Benjamin Dixon Show. We're going to run down some headlines with him. And then second on our program, we have an interview with an unbossed congressional candidate from Virginia's 11th district. Wouldn't it be nice to have someone who knows something about environmental policy actually in the Congress? I think that would be spectacular. How is she going to do it if she's not taking money from those big industries? We are going to talk with her. Stay tuned. We have a great show. Ben Dixon is joining us to do the headlines in this upcoming segment where we talk about what's happening in the Ukraine, how the oil and gas industries are making hay while the sun shines. And we're also going to be discussing a little bit, slight twinge of white supremacy in the coverage of the Ukraine conflict. Stay tuned. Hi, Ben. Thanks for joining me today.
Julianna, thank you so much for having me.
No, it's always a joy. I'm very thrilled that you're here. Okay, let's get right to it. So I'm springing these headlines on you, which I think will be even more fun. But I'm sure that you've been following everything that's going on since you have your own program, which airs right here on the act.tv network as well. You're coming at me from where? You're outside.
Yes, I am actually, and there's a good reason why, and it connects to the headlines.
Tell me.
I am in Jacksonville, Florida, and I am working with the local community here to get a message out for Ukraine. The local community here wanted to say something, and I was able to connect here, and we're on the ground. And honestly, it took me a minute because I had to get access to the Wi-Fi. So here I am. Sorry, I'm late.
No problem. You're just perfectly on time. So I was thrilled to see you here. Wasn't sure if it was going to work out, but happy to have you. So the crisis in the Ukraine is obviously continuing to spark worldwide unrest. Fox News switched from loving Putin to wanting him dead in less than 24 hours. Like, seriously, Tucker Carlson, first he was doing this, and then he was doing this, blaming Putin. And then, of course, he decided to just go back to blaming Biden. Now he's doing this. That's what he's doing. What do you make of the fact that Fox News followers still listen to their network, even when their network is basically at odds with itself over the course of less than a day?
Right. I think that, Juliana, it worries me about their whether or not they're rational actors, right? One of the things we talk about all the time in school about this is rational actors, but the people who can see Fox News flip on a dime and just go right along with them, that's an irrational action, and we have millions of examples of it in real life.
Yeah, it's actually really frightening about just how deep the propaganda has convinced them that it's Fox News right or wrong, just like it's Trump right or wrong, just like, it's Republicans right or wrong. It's really sad and scary.
Yeah, and it shows us that there are some people, for whatever reason, they're incapable of grappling with the truth. And because they can't process it, that defines them as an irrational actor.
I think it's because he somehow mesmerized them with his bow tie that he actually doesn't wear anymore, but somehow I still see it when I look at him.
And that was the other thing. I was going to answer this question first because the thing that jumped out to me was the fact that this was a game for Tucker Carlson. See, he's able to switch sides now because he's safe inside of the empire, but he's a part of the pan-reactionary movement that made this possible. Right. He is the laundromat of white supremacy for the United States. It's the sanitized version of it. I prefer the version I find in Jacksonville, to be quite honest. At least the racists here know how to cook chitlins.
Very well said. You know, actually, I'm going to pivot, Giancarlo. This is going to jump to the video that we're going to play. One of our folks over at act.tv made this compilation video of some of the coverage that's been going on of the Ukraine that is just blatant white supremacy on display. I'm sure you've probably seen it and maybe you've already commented on it, but I'd love to get your thoughts about this for our audience. Let's take a look. These are, it's a compilation video, as I said, that came from Twitter. And as Westerners, many of us don't have firsthand experience with the atrocities of war. It's important for us to continue to show our solidarity with the people of the Ukraine, but it's also important to call out these egregious statements by people in the mainstream corporate media. Let's take a look at the mashup.
Isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen.
It's very emotional for me because I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed, children being killed every day with Putin's missiles.
Poland was one of the EU countries that was hesitant to take in refugees. Talk about what has changed and the different position now.
Yeah, well, just to put it bluntly, these are not refugees from Syria. These are refugees from neighboring Ukraine. I mean, that, quite frankly, is part of it. These are Christians, they're white, they're very similar.
These are prosperous, I'm loath to use the expression, these are prosperous middle-class people. These are not obviously refugees trying to get away from areas in the Middle East that are still in a big state of war. These are not people trying to get away from areas in North Africa. They look like any European family that you would live next door to.
Now the unthinkable has happened to them. And this is not a developing third world nation. This is Europe.
I mean, rich whites, Ben. It's rich whites. We must.
I think you guys put that together just for me, didn't you?
We did, kind of. I was like, hey, guess who's coming on the show tomorrow? Ben Dixon. What should we talk about?
Oh, you white people know how to stir black people up. I tell you that much. I got the blood boiling.
Did you see this already? I mean, any one of those clips we could spend an hour like deconstructing them.
Yeah. Oh, if you would allow me, let me see if I can do it in 60 seconds.
Take your time.
Well, okay. I think I will. Thank you. These are the eggheads. No offense. I'm from the university. I'm an egghead myself. I just so happen to have grown up hood adjacent. I'm not from the hood. It's hood adjacent. There's a difference. Mm-hmm. The people who are escaping Ukraine right now love you, mean it, but they're the ones who could afford to leave. Mm. And yet they cast aspersion on the poor people of the global South, upon whose bones their freedom stands. So it's like I really almost am loath to even offer advice, but I can't be that petty in this moment, because the truth of the matter is the very last thing you all need to do is leave. Everyone needs to stay and do several things that we could talk about in a minute. But the last thing that needs to be done is for these soldiers to be taking over empty cities, because then the soldier feels like they're at war. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. They're not even thinking about how to fix the problem anymore. They're getting on the planes and getting out. No offense, at least you can afford to. But the neighborhood that I'm in right now in Jacksonville, nobody in this neighborhood would be able to afford to leave if Russia attacked us.
I thought the MSNBC piece was kind of interesting because she was, she wasn't saying those words. She was saying, well, I think it's because the people are rich and white. I mean, she was being kind of honest with the reason why certain countries in the area were unhappy to take Syrians and just fine taking the Ukrainians. But the other ones were saying
the racial component also, obviously, like, the underlying and the religious component. It intersects on so many different levels of offensiveness.
I think it's interesting. I mean, it's certainly offensive. And we're about to talk about how the fossil fuel industry is trying to make hay while the sun shines here, trying to make some money as this crisis proceeds. it's a similar thing with climate change. It's like, oh, climate change is affecting the low-lying brown people. And now all of a sudden they're like, oh, climate, this new report talks about climate change affecting all the people of the world. And as the food system collapses, of course, the poor people are going to feel it first, but we're very close to everybody feeling it now. Very, very close, according to this new UN piece. And
what do? The first thing they do is leave. Well, in the case of climate change, again, no offense to academia. I hail from it. I would have finished, but I ran out of money. So I identify with the working class community that I'm in right this moment. And none of us would be able to get out of here if something happened here. And so I feel a certain way when the people who were the managers, the people who were the CEOs of the companies, the people who were like Tucker Carlson, because you got to help people to see this group. The people who are getting out right now are the Tucker Carlsons, the staff of Fox News, the last helicopter out, and Roger Ailes, or whichever one is still alive.
Yeah, which one is still?
Those are the people who are leaving Ukraine right now. Those are the people who are safely now in another nation because they have enough money to leave. Meanwhile, the rest of the Ukrainian people who built that country are left to the Russian forces.
Absolutely. It's absolutely disgusting. And of course, I don't want anybody killed, whether they be I'll just stop right there before I get myself a lot of trouble. We also have, in addition to Fox News here in the country, we also have RT America on Russian state media, where everyone is blaming NATO for expanding and provoking the beast. And first of all, a beast is a beast, whether he is provoked or not. Right. Putin's been planning this for a long time. And NATO is, of course, going to expand. I mean, if they didn't expand, how would Lockheed Martin make $17.7 billion in profit in just Q4? That's Q4. That's it. That's profit. That's profit.
I actually have a recommendation. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Julianna. Let me know.
What I was going to say was maybe we're about to say the same thing. Why don't you go ahead? You're the guest.
No. You know what? We probably could be, and I would love to hear you.
All right. So this is what I'm saying. First of all, just for some context, we still have this for-profit arms industry in this world and in this country, and NATO countries have to meet a certain armament threshold with certain specific types of munitions, and that means they have to buy arms in order to stay in NATO. Cha-ching! And the more countries that open up to NATO, the more arms that can be sold. So it's really a voracious desire for profit that pushed the West to expand the alliance, just like the NRA at home wants to arm teachers with guns they'll happily sell them to protect school kids from the guns they happily sold to the school shooters. It's the same shit. And as I have said in the past, and I know it sounds so far outside of normal political and economic discourse, but a ban on profiteering on the creation or sale of arms is the answer. Super socialists call this the nationalization of the arms industry. And thereby bringing it under, hopefully, democratic control. My plan, those who makes weapons, because, come on, we're dealing with the human race here, and sometimes weapons are necessary. Those people who work in the factories get paid a living wage. Those who administrate those factories and the operation be paid a wage compensatory to their skill level, but not more than 10 or 20% higher than the labor force. Any profit goes into creating tools of peacekeeping at home, abroad. Company stocks cannot be publicly traded. So that $17 billion, Medicare for all, free college, a green economy. That's what I was going to say, Ben. You?
I'm so glad I shut my mouth. Sometimes we men just need to say less.
No.
Well, no, and I mean that. I actually mean that, because you're redirecting the demand, you're seizing the supply, and you're starving out the incentive motive, the profit motive.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the kind of talk that sounds crazy and never gets you hired on a network. So we thank act.tv.
This is actually a solution.
Exactly. And, at what is that crazier than what we're living through? At what point do we take the reins back from the market and say, I'm sorry, but this industry is too dangerous to let the market decide. The people are going to decide.
That's right.
That's what I'm saying.
No, that ass. That's it. I mean, the defense industry is too important to let these blood-sucking vulture capitalists be at the helm of it. Now, listen, mine was just going to be a little. I was going to say, there's no way we're going to be able to get these corporations off of this type of wealth without them starting a war. Would you agree, Julianna?
Yes, and I think they're doing that now.
Yeah. So and that empowers networks like Russia today to peddle that narrative very successfully, I might add, because it really looks pretty true. In this case, I think the model is broken, and it's been broken from the side of Vladimir Putin. And I think the onus is at his court more than anyone else. But that does not negate there is a problem, an infestation there's a cancer inside of our country, and it is core industries being decided by some sick, sociopathic, greedy middle manager who's trying to get, they're trying to get to the holiday party and impress the lady they want to screw in the HR. I'm sorry.
No, you got it. I mean, and also like they have that fiduciary duty, which supersedes the duty to humanity. I mean, it's just, we got problems.
Well, I think we have a case study now that, well, anyway, see, I am from academia, and my mind is going right into how broken our models are. Like, I get it. The neorealism school is shook right now, right? The school that says, well, actually, no, let me correct myself. The neorealism school isn't shook. We kind of saw this coming. We knew Vladimir Putin had enough power to do what he wanted to do. And so he just had to make up his mind whether or not he was going to do it. I misspoke. It's the neoliberal school, not the economic school that everyone talks about on a regular basis, but the neoliberal collectivist, the idea behind the UN, the collective action, the idea behind NATO. Now, shout out to them. They look good now. NATO looks nice and solid now.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody looks solid when aliens come down from heaven and we all have to unify, of course. And can I say one thing about the supposed Nazis inside of Ukraine who are actually Ukrainian nationalists? It's important for people to know the difference between Nazis who are fascists and nationalists who have a certain amount of pride in their nation. If you Google the Ukrainian national anthem and you see there's a song where all the men were lined up in their military uniforms and they were like saluting, and they are prideful and they are nationalists. And I tell you one damn thing, I would fight it with side by side some nationalists here in the United States to push out some Russians. So don't talk to us about, oh, there's some Nazis. No. The Nazis are in bed with Putin. Let's be clear. The biggest Nazi on the international stage is Vladimir Putin. And the nationalists who love Ukraine above anything else, yeah, they're going to get a bad rap because they probably suck, and I wouldn't want to hang out with them, right? Unless I had an escort. I got an escort here in Jacksonville, so I'm good.
Nice.
Mama over there, we're good. But in this case, we really have to understand those nationalists that they're trying to vilify, they're simply trying to protect their nation. And damn it, if I wouldn't fight right by them.
Well, we have gone way over time, but I want you to stay here because I have two more stories. I see that our next guest, Ally Dalsimer, is on. So, Ally, if you can hang on, because these environmental stories are going to slide right into the conversation that I'm going to have with you. Ally is running for the 11th district in Virginia in Congress. She is not taking any corporate money, and she has a background in environmental policy on the good side, on the good team. And this is just in time for our story number 2, which is this new scientific report by the International Governmental Panel on Climate Change concluding, surprise, surprise, that urgent action really needs to be taken, like super urgent, like right now, like as urgent as we find what's happening in the Ukraine to reduce greenhouse gas emissions before the effects overtake the planet. That's what they said, overcome the planet. Those are the words that they used. The Times has called the report the most meticulous appraisal of the dangers of climate change to date. And apparently the countries of the world have to do more than just, try to safeguard their cities and their real coastline real estate. Basically, the report, I feel like there's a report that comes out about this every 15 minutes, and they always say, oh my God, and this is, the next one. But it's talking, I think, in this moment where we are concerned about an existential crisis because of nuclear armaments and the possible use of nuclear armaments by a madman, and then what that could unleash in our world. For me, the threat of climate change is equally urgent. And I'll tell you, the United Nations Secretary General, he said that the report, he called it an atlas of human suffering and a damning indictment of failed climate leadership. But can we blame the leaders who, again, are bought by the corporations, or in one man's case, failed to fight for their actual presidency that they actually won? Al Gore, you're in Florida right now, Ben, where he lost it. But instead, he made a movie about climate change and then bought a TV network that actually talked about climate change and was a space for real progressive news and views, a challenge that we could use right now to CNN and Fox. But then, of course, he sold it and he made a lot of money. And so we have no actual network. But anyway, that's a lot to say all in one breath. The report reveals how people on the planet are already getting clobbered by climate change. As we're going to have migration and refugee situation, the whole thing. Your thoughts, Ben?
Poor people are hit first. I don't care what color poor, poor is poor, right? They're always the first ones to experience any crisis, and they are the first ones to get shot in any war. It's a poor person. And so the same thing is reflective here in this study that you're talking about, because at the end of the day, they're fighting the same cancer. They can't get people to take this seriously because half of the world seems to think this is a game. Like Tucker Carlson at the top of the show, you're talking at the top of the headlines, you're talking about Tucker, and now he's flipped, and now he's on the good side. He's an American again. Oh, you were a Russian a couple of days ago, bro.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I wonder what made him switch. I'm waiting for reports on why did he do that?
Because he likes to think he's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Because he likes to think he's a Brinksman. He thought that he was just playing a particular side. And now he realizes, oh, yeah, no, this was the side that actually will destroy your nice lifestyle in Manhattan, you little soy boy.
One of the most striking conclusions in the report is that the impacts are more widespread and way more negative than they expected. And food and water insecurity are widespread now, affecting millions across the globe. As you said, poor, but this report is saying, nope, it's more than the poor now. These are not, the grocery store where I live in the good old United States, and I am also adjacent to some not so nice areas, but generally the grocery store has been full, and now it's not. And they're like, oh, it's the line that, the supply lines. I don't think so. When are they going to actually tell us that it's not the supply lines anymore? That it's that they actually can't grow coffee? That's my question.
Okay, so now I need information. We can't grow coffee?
No. Oh, they're having trouble with climate change and growing coffee and chocolate. So if you have the money, bulk up.
You know what it is, Julianna? See, this is why it's impossible for us to survive without one another. I'm so tuned in to what's going on. I like to think I have a solution for the people of Ukraine. Open up your homes, open up your Wi-Fi, take off your passwords, let the soldiers, let them hop on your Wi-Fi, give them free, give them, I have to write it. It's too much. I have to write it. Let me digress. But I am not tuned in enough to be able to process the fact that we can't grow coffee. Please,
I'm sorry.
This is news to me.
Yeah. Coffee, chocolate, the fruit is failing in the West. We got problems here. And not only that, but the oil and gas in companies. I'm sorry, I'm giving you maybe you already had an existential crisis over possibly.
No, I need to learn something. Please.
All right. So here's
I cover climate, but I cover it from environmental justice and from the limited knowledge that I have. So I always have room to learn. So
yeah. And Ally's going to come on after and tell me where I'm wrong on this. So nope, she's shaking her head. We're right. Okay. So this is
bring her in. I'm sorry. This is
I would love to, but in a second. Oil and gas companies. This is the report. This is something that just as if my blood wasn't already bubbling over everything that's happening in the Ukraine. Oil and gas companies here in the US are using Russia's invasion of the Ukraine to derail the Biden administration's climate agenda, which could have been more robust in the first place, if you ask me. We've got the API, American Petroleum Institute, which is a lobby group that represents our favorites, ExxonMobil, Chevron, and Shell, and the other murderous entities. They tweeted out a series of policy suggestion hours before the invasion began. They were ready to make a what was Naomi Klein's book? The one there's a crisis, you take advantage of it and make money. That one, I forget what it's called. They said the following: we got to give permits for fossil fuel extraction on public lands. We need a 5-year offshore leasing plan. We have to speed up the permitting process for fossil fuel infrastructure. We got to reduce, legal barriers, regulatory barriers. I mean, the fossil fuel industry argument is that more U.S. oil and gas production is going to help reduce the cost at home and support the countries in Europe, which is absolutely freaking insane. If you ask environmental groups, they say that, along with the resulting shocks to the global market, they're arguing that fossil fuels contribute to both an unstable climate and an unstable energy landscape. Like, no one goes to war over solar energy. There's no like how reliable are fossil fuels?
Maybe we should. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No more
that
war.
was a good point.
No more war.
No more war. I mean, how reliable are fossil fuels when any big storm that happens, any war that pops up, the reality is thrown into question, Are we going to go one way or the other? Are we going to go toward killing everything by doing more oil and gas because it got cut off by a war? Or are we going to go the right way, the life affirming way?
No, if anyone watches Doctor Who, these people refuse to turn left. They just refuse to turn left. They are going to always choose to go right. And what a perfect analog, because they're fascists. They are the right wing. This is the grand pan-reactionary moment. We should mark this. This is the big push of all their secret meetings in the background, because Julianna, I think I heard you say that they had this press release ready right at the beginning of this.
Oh, yeah.
So that shows us who the traitors are in our country. They knew about this. Let's get some FOIA requests on that. Somebody investigate that.
Yeah, good point. Republican lawmakers have been repeating the industry calls for more oil and gas production, of course, because they are bought off by those industries. There's also a nice fat 10 Dems who wrote a letter to Biden saying, release the oil petroleum reserves and lower the costs in the short term. It's fucking gross. Some of them even said,
if they lower the costs in the short term, they're trying to flood. I'm trying to think of the economic impact, because really they're playing a short-term game. Remember at the beginning of the pandemic when the gas prices were really, really low and we all celebrated? Well, there were people who were shorting the markets that made a whole lot of money. And so this is just another game that they played like in 2008, when you had people who, even though everyone else lost everything, they were shorting the markets and they made it out filthy rich. This is just the next movement of this.
Good point, Ben Dixon. Here's another funny thing, Ben. They said, oh, well, we should start up the Keystone pipeline again. We should open that back up. And that is just a huge assumption that we're all a bunch of morons, because, a lot of us are. But anyway, the Keystone pipeline does not process oil through the system. So that is ridiculous. That is absolutely, they're just trying to.
So we have the Keystone pipeline over here, and we have the one over there that is at the core of the battle in Ukraine. So it's about the oil. So maybe, they've gone to war on us for years, for centuries, over oil. I don't know. Maybe we should go to war with them over some green. It's for some solar panels, damn it.
I know, just put the panels on, for crying out loud. Well, it could go one of two ways, right? We
Absolutely.
could just say,
turn left or right.
We're going to forget about the climate problem and just go all out, full out war and forget about everything. Or let's take this moment to realize that security depends on a green energy economy. Anyone?
That's right. That's right. There's an opportunity for some enterprising socialists
like ourselves, perhaps. Ben, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you coming on even while you're doing your work down in Florida. You're not coming from the home studio. So
I need a plug. I need a connection. If anyone knows the Ukrainian community in Jacksonville, I'd like to get connected deeper because we want to hear from people in the United States who are connected to the people of Ukraine. We need to hear from them.
Ben, give us your Twitter handle. We'll have the people reach out if they know anybody.
Thank you. At Benjamin P. Dixon on Twitter.
Thank you so much for being on the show. And I look forward to having you back next time.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
You're watching actTV. Coming up next on our program, you know how I have been following these unbossed candidates who are running for office. Remember, we just had on ActTV the Seize the House event with Marianne Williamson, Crystal Ball, Katie Halper, and her name just flew out of my head. Brianna Joy Gray. We hosted it and we supported a whole bunch of candidates who are running progressive campaigns without taking corporate donations, one of which is here with us today. Ally Dalsimer is joining us for an interview right after this. Ally Dalsimer running for Congress to represent the people of Virginia's 11th district. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Julianna. I love what you're doing, Julianna. We're loving what you're doing today. And can I just, before we get started, can I just speak? Because listening to Ben talk about how he didn't know about coffee, and you talked a little bit about that. I'm sure we'll get into this. Spent 30 years as a natural resources expert. 1 of every 3 mouthfuls of food that people eat is a direct result of pollination. And climate change, which is really climate weirding, which sets cycles off, is really impacting that. So it's coffee, tea, vanilla, honey, chocolate, tequila, blueberries, apples, almonds. It's 1 out of every 3 mouthfuls of food. It's in addition, an exacerbating factor is the loss of topsoil that's happening, especially throughout the middle of the country. And we will literally lose our topsoil in 40 years. So, this short-term profit-driven just attitude that you guys were just talking about is at the root of everything. And watching what's happening in Ukraine and thinking people are only focused on the short-term economic gains of how they can make money from oil, opening up the XL pipeline or whatever. I don't even know the word. I just don't understand how people can be so small-minded and so short-sighted as to not understand that an existential threat actually means a threat to our existence on this planet. It really
boggles the mind.
Reasons I'm running.
Yes, it boggles the mind. And, as we interviewed a whole bunch of candidates during the Seize the House, not all for one district, but for districts across the country. And I was really happy that you were willing and able to come on the show today, because it's not usual that you see people who, like yourself, have been a co-founder of multiple national conservation initiatives, someone who has the policy background in environmental conservation, run for office. Can you first talk about what you've been doing up until this point, and then talk about the push that made you make that change to really just run to be the leader, as opposed to advising the leaders as you did as one of Obama's White House Climate Council folks?
Yeah, thanks. Absolutely. So, I started at a small nonprofit environmental foundation that leveraged public-private funding to do high priority conservation initiatives, which basically is a lot of a word salad for we We, tried to save black-footed ferrets and gray wolves and, creatures that were at the brink of extinction, the bald eagle, that kind of thing. And I worked my way up over the years, doing a number of positions to becoming head of DoD's Natural Resources Program. And DoD has 25 million acres of land that they steward on behalf of the American people. And they have some of the most dedicated biologists ever. Just amazing people. And, it is the civilian side. It's not the military side. But we were able to be very successful. I was able to be very successful because I reached across those aisles and worked with them and tried to find the common ground and the mutual benefit of doing things. So for example, invasive species. And for those who don't know, an invasive species is something that's not native to an area. And when it comes and it just like explodes and it basically kills everything, think of kudzu or something like that, just takes over. The kudzu, for those who don't know, is called the vine that ate the South. And so you have these species that are invasive. And so, for example, we had there was a parachute training exercise that was supposed to happen on an installation, and somebody went out to ground truth the area and found it was covered in a plant called yellow star thistle. And yellow star thistle is an invasive plant that has 1/2-inch spines on it. So you can't drop a person into that. They'll be torn up. And so that kind of thing, working with the military side to say, hey, we need to deal with these invasive species. We need to make sure that we're keeping our land in high quality. We need to make sure that we're reducing fire hazards, whatever the issue was for that particular installation. And we were able to leverage those because they wanted to drop people into the area and we wanted to make sure we were maintaining the biodiversity. So
that's unfortunate. I mean, that's good. But
DoD is also one of the first, though, to tackle climate change, right? It was the Navy, and their concern was, passage over the Northern Passage, melting, and Russia. And the Navy was on the cutting edge of that. Turns out they were right.
Turns out they were right.
But here's the problem, right? And this is the second half of your question and why I'm running. The problem is that so I worked with these folks and we did all this policy and we put these things in place, and then the Trump administration comes in, and as part of their top 100 things they're going to accomplish, was like 30 of them that were anti-environmental. And I'm literally, my job was eliminated by a Trump appointee because I was pushing a climate agenda. I went down to Interior and I fought for our ability to continue to manage migratory birds when they wanted to roll back the MBTA. And so I sort of won those battles and lost the war, and my position was eliminated due to lack of funding.
Well, yes, obviously.
Because they're broke. Yes. But the point was,
there's golf courses that need to be built, Ally.
What's that?
There's golf courses that needed to be built.
Right. Exactly. Actually, we worked with the golf course people too, because there's golf courses. So what did we do? We reached out to them and we created pollinator and amphibian and reptile habitats to surround them. So we reduced their chemical loads by 50%, that kind of stuff. So in a way, it's tinkering around the edges because the military's doing what the military's doing. But we did our best. And more importantly, we worked with partners at the state, national, and international levels to make things happen. And we had a force multiplier, to use a DoD term, in benefit at an eco-regional scale. But to get back to why, right? I'm literally watching the Trump administration roll back everything, undo all the policy work that I had worked so hard with so many others to put into place. Climate was a perfect example. And realized in order to make a change that's going to stick, that's going to have a long-term benefit, it's got to be done at the legislative level. You have to put these laws in place. It's really hard to undo a law once it's in place. It's super easy to undo a policy. You just say, oh, here's a new policy. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the big picture reason. The small picture reason is a little more detailed, and I'm sure you've talked with lots of candidates. It's like one day you're like, yes, I'm going to run. And the next day you're like, there's no way I'm doing this. And then the next day, it's like, yes, I'm going to run. And the next day it's like, I'm not doing this. So it's,
you
it's
really are, especially running, with this not taking corporate donations. You're basically saying, I'm going to run a campaign that is moral, And so in running a moral campaign for the people of your district, and I would say the people of the country, because you're running not just for a local office, but you're running for Congress. So that is the law of the land. That would be all of us. And I just think you're basically, I mean, you and the others who are doing this are saying, I'm willing to have this target on my back because these things are more important to me than, my personal whatever. And I do commend you greatly for having the I mean, it takes a spirit, a strong spirit to be able to do that. And I'm happy to be able to support you and to give you as much of our audience that we can at this moment. Talk about your district. I mean, what is going on there, and are they resonating with your environmental message?
Yeah. So first, let me just quickly say thank you for allowing me to be on your show and giving me your audience. I think that's great because you're right. I'm not taking any corporate PAC or dark monies. I'm running a people-driven grassroots campaign. And the reason, and I want to talk about that, the reason is because I genuinely believe in my heart that profit perverts motives. So there's no room for profit in the public discourse, in a public good. And that includes the environment. It includes healthcare. It includes the jail system. It includes the incarceration system. It includes education. Profit should not be a motive there. And in terms of the other grassroots candidates, I want to be part of a movement. We've got this small handful of people right now, Cori Bush, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, AOC, they're trying to do stuff, but there's like 6 of them, right? We need to get like 30 more of us in there so that we can finally start making an impact, because everybody talks about campaign finance reform. And as soon as they're elected, they're like, oh yeah, I didn't really mean it. And
yeah,
so
I wondered why that always fell off the table. Yeah.
What's that?
I wondered how and why that always fell off the table.
Funny. Yeah, funny. Well, like the guy I'm running against, Gerald Connolly, he took $38,300 from Leidos last quarter. That was one of his contributions. And you're going to turn around and tell me that he doesn't have some sort of incentive to try and make sure that Leidos and other war industry, profit-making companies are going to, oh, shocker, oh, I'm sorry. He was just in Brussels saying that we absolutely need to arm the Ukrainians. What do you know, right? So it's ridiculous. In terms of this district, Virginia's 11th is just outside of Washington, D.C., primarily Fairfax and Fairfax City. And it's a relatively affluent community, but it's definitely a tale of 2 cities in terms of have and have nots, right? You have all the people who are your federal workforce, your corporate people, but then you've got the entire infrastructure of people that support those people. My neighbor is a construction worker. His wife cleans homes. The person across the street works in a travel agency. It's the people who support and maintain our entire infrastructure. And as everyone who is watching this, I'm sure knows, they've seen their real pay shrink in terms of real dollar terms. Rents are skyrocketing. Housing prices are skyrocketing. Fairfax is already 150% more expensive than the rest of Virginia. But we don't have a higher minimum wage. It's still $9.50 because, of course, everybody can live on that.
Netflix just emailed me saying they're going to be $15.50 a month. That's an hour and a half of work for somebody, that is ridiculous. Anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't live the prices, and who can afford, who's going to buy Netflix is a superfluous thing that you can toss aside, but food isn't. And the price of food is skyrocketed.
Food is skyrocketing for a lot of the reasons we've discussed. And it's not only that, but what about, broadband, internet, cell phones? These things are not really luxuries in today's age. These things are required in order to function and to have a job and be functional in our modern society. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot that we really need to be looking at in terms of messages resonating in this district. I have found that it differs depending on who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to people who are house secure and have a job and insurance, then climate is actually their number one concern, climate and COVID. And of course, recently we're Ukraine, but in terms of broad issues, those are the big things. Healthcare, climate. But if I'm talking to people who are really struggling to pay the rent, who really don't know if they can if they can buy meds because they have to buy food. Their big concern, of course, is healthcare. That's a common thread. But they're more concerned about a living wage. They're more concerned about housing prices. They're more concerned about gas prices and about food prices. They're concerned about the immediacy of now, because what happens 5 years or 10 years from now is irrelevant to them if they're not sure they can make it to next year. So it really depends on who we're talking to, which is why this inside-outside approach is so important, why we need activists on the ground pushing things, and why we need legislature, people in, making legislative decisions, people in all levels of government, from local, state to federal, trying to push policies that try to actually genuinely help people and the public good, to be public servants. People go into this because they're supposed to be public servants. That means to serve the public and not your corporate interests.
Ally, I have a concern that sort of those tale of two cities, on the one hand, the housing secure, the folks with insurance, they might care about the environment, but they may or may not be willing to give up some of their luxuries, which is going to be required, in my opinion. I would be happy to hear your thoughts, in order to have a secure environment. And then on the other side of the coin, the folks who feel like the system has failed them, they're working hard and they somehow still can't get ahead. They can't jump these barriers to entry that have been getting higher and higher. They are sort of prey for these authoritarian movements, the Trump movements, to come and to steal them from a true populism party. Populism meaning the best form of populism, not the Trump great populace. What are your thoughts here?
So first, I think you're spot on, except that when I've talked with people, even those who are housing secure and, whatever, solidly middle or upper middle class, I'm resonating very much with, and I said it in Seize the House. I am the most qualified natural resources expert to ever run for Congress and would be the only one if elected. I've written climate policy. So that resonates with people. And, a lot of these people they're driving their Priuses, they're walking around, they care about the environment. They shop at Whole Foods. And so they resonate. The ones who don't resonate, frankly, are the more right-wing people who listen to the Tucker Carlsons of the world and think this is all a bunch of hooey, and they really don't. I'm never going to win them over. Because don't
waste your time. Yeah.
No, they've believed a false narrative. They don't want to believe that they have been brainwashed in any way. No one wants to think that they've been wrong, that they've been duped. And the only way that it's the 70-30 rule, right? 70% of them will eventually realize it when the evidence is overwhelming, and 30% are still never ever going to recognize it, no matter how overwhelming the evidence is.
Like the folks who are like, I'm not getting a vaccine no matter what, and they're on their deathbeds. That's those folks. Oh, that's
I had I'll just take an aside and then I'll go back to the rest of your question. I had this conversation with this woman the other day because in Virginia, the schools dropped their mask mandate as of today because we now have a Republican governor, Youngkin, he ran on the anti-mask thing. It was very interesting, this conversation, because the woman I was speaking to was like, you can't force me to wear a mask. That's just government, whatever. And it's my choice. And I was like, you don't wear a seatbelt? You don't drive the speed limit? You don't do any, do you drive drunk?
And she was like, I hadn't thought of it.
So, it's a foolish, specious argument, whatever. I personally believe that the Republicans are brilliant because they're changing the narrative and having people focus on superfluous issues, like whether it's a freedom of choice to wear a mask versus the fact that they are
deregulating,
undermining the entire security of our country and the people who live here, as well as the people who live on the planet, and that there's only one planet. So it's a smoke and mirrors game, and you can't pay attention to that. The second part of your question was about the messaging with those who are really food insecure, housing insecure, and really struggling. And a lot of those are especially young people. And I have to tell you, they are the core of my base when I have talked with them. My biggest challenge is simply name recognition. The incumbent has been in there for forever. And so me getting the word out, you know, is the biggest challenge, which is why if anyone's watching, if you're in district, please volunteer with us. We need more door knockers, people calling. If you're out of district, throw us some cash. The reality is that, you know, like Juliana said, I'm not taking any corporate PAC or dark money. So until we get to campaign reform,
I'm sure the Democrat that you're running against in the primary is taking money from out of state. They all are. I don't, you know, I can't be sure, but I'm pretty sure. I mean, I've been covering these independent races, and most of the people who are running against a centrist Democrat or a corporate Democrat, they're taking money from places that are outside of from corporations that would benefit to keep them seated. So we need to, I mean, I'm hoping you can take this video that we're doing and we can send it to environmental groups across the country, because wouldn't it be wonderful to have an environmental policy advocate out there speaking? I mean, you don't have to like go look it up and write a speech and figure it out. You just already know what needs to be said and how it needs to be said. And that would be very, very helpful to us as we fight sort of this climate fight. Right. Your district is mostly Democrats, right? So if you win the primary, you'll likely win the general.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the things that the incumbent, his name's Gerald Connolly, most people probably don't know who he is. He's actually passed one piece of substantive legislation in well over a decade in office. So people really don't know who he is. But it's my little gouge there. But we have
to be honest about what these people are doing or not doing. So gouge away. Go ahead.
Thank you for that. So interestingly enough, he's obviously very well known in the district. Just because he's been around so long, and he's actually spreading a narrative that the fact that I am challenging him means that I am putting him at risk in the general. That's his first thing. And second of all, that I am risking flipping this district in 23 or 24, because look what happened with Youngkin. And first of all, there's no risk in the general, because this is a D+32 district, which means about 75 to 80% of the district are registered Democrats. It's one of the bluest districts, I think, on the East Coast. And in terms of 23 or 24 in Youngkin, you know what? Youngkin won because Democrats lost suburban women, primarily suburban white women. Yes. I'm a suburban white woman. How is my running going to risk losing suburban white women? The fact of the matter is that he's spreading a false narrative because he's concerned about this challenge. He's genuinely concerned about this challenge. And, you know, we actually, he should be, because we obviously, any challenger is, you know, has an uphill battle. But the fact that he is, and this is the truth, he has threatened local Democrats in the Democratic Party. He has threatened them that if they openly support me, that he will work to make sure that they lose their committee seats and that they never advance in party politics.
I think you need to write down, if you do me a favor, tweet out and like tag me and tag ActTV who supports him with money. I'm sure you probably already know. We'll spread it around that there is a bought corporate Democrat who is running against an unbought environmentalist who obviously, I mean, I've gone through your website. We don't have time to go through all the issues here, but you know, it's not like you're just running on the environment. You've got housing, you've got disability access, you've got you know, healthcare, you've got education, you've got incarceration, you've got all the things that need to be dealt with. This isn't your one and only platform, just like a lot of the corporate lawyers, their one and only platform isn't helping, you know, corporate law or whatever, you know. So you've got all the right
universal health care, universal pre-K, because the fact is, as everybody here knows, a child's zip code before they're 8 is the single biggest determinant of their success, which is just BS. Taking profit out of the prison system, which is so broken. But on the environment, I mean, you know, my opponent takes money from oil and gas. I've signed the No Fossil Fuel Pledge, the Activate Virginia Pledge. I'm a Virginia Green New Deal champion. I will never take fossil fuel, never. And I think using this conflict, this war in the Ukraine as a reason to say that we need to drill in public lands, which would be a nightmare for on a global scale. I don't think people understand the key role that our natural areas, which are so few, what a key role they currently play. They're already insufficient. You know, there's the Amazon rainforest. There's an area the size of Great Britain being devastated every year so that we can have cows, so that we can have more beef. You know, frankly, I've been a vegan for a long time. I did not go there because of environmental stuff, but the environmental benefits of skipping even one meat meal a week are huge. So, you know, we need to be looking at things on a multi-pronged scale, right? Think globally, act locally. I grew up with that mantra, right? 70s, the environmental movement, women's movement. Think globally, act locally, make a difference in your daily life, and elect people like me into office so that we can make those differences on a national and global scale.
I do want to say that it's important to go to Ally's website and read about her past, your history as a person, because you have a military father, so you are not like a tree hugging. Oh, hey, I like tree hugging. I think it's a good thing. But you know, you understand about issues around national security, that it's not necessarily always about hugs and kisses, right? You have that understanding. You have traveled internationally to Africa. You understand what global poverty is about. You have such a depth of knowledge from your life history that I do encourage everyone to go to Ally for Congress. It's right over here in the thing, and either make a contribution, read a little bit more, send Ally. You can send this video to people you know who are in districts. But again, remember, every race is a national race at this point. So a couple of bucks, I'm making a plug for you, Ally, a couple of bucks could go a long way. I do want to say, I hope it's okay to do this, but my condolences on the recent, very, very recent passing of your mom. Has her death put your run into additional context for you?
So I was the primary caregiver for my mom. She had previously been in a rehab facility and suffered actual neglect and abuse. And so I brought her home, and we have a small home, but she was basically living on our sofa, and I was taking care of her. And so, the one thing she kept saying was, don't worry about me, just focus on the campaign, do your call time. And of course that was ridiculous, because, you know, she was more important. And she did just die a few days ago, and I took a few days, but she was my biggest supporter. She was the person who was my biggest cheerleader. She did everything she could. She told me I should use her illness as a way to raise money, that she would do a video with her so that I could raise money from that. And I was like, oh, I'm not doing that. She's like, no, do it. Use me. And I was like, oh my goodness, Mom, really? Let's just focus on you right now. You know, let's bathe you, let's feed you, let's get your meds, whatever.
Well, she was an example of an unjust.
She was a kick-ass, tough old broad, is how she called herself. She's like, I am a kick-ass, tough old broad. And she started amazing programs, women in development programs, literacy programs. She put her money where her mouth is. And it was amazing. And in terms of context, I really seriously thought about discontinuing the race in order to focus on her. And when I told her that, she got so upset with me.
She's like, I'm going to die.
I am now I've now doubled down. And you know what else? I'm tired of being bullied by the good old boy network that is part of the establishment Democrats. It's just not okay to put women down. You know, we've been putting up with it for too long, and it's time for us to band together and say enough is enough and stand up to that good old boy network, embrace the men who want to support us, and work together as a coalition to get shit done.
Ally Dalsimer, you put it as well as it could possibly be put. Obviously, my condolences. I mean, from your life, you know what people are going through, and from your work, you have worked tirelessly over the course of your life to make sure we have an environment that both we want to live in, but also that our children can continue to thrive in. So I thank you very much for what you've already done. I guess we here at act.tv and everyone's watching will have to become your greatest supporters in the vacuum left by your mom. We certainly can't fulfill that, or fill that shoes, but we do support you, and we will be following your campaign. What day is the primary?
Thank you, Juliana, for that. I appreciate it. The primary is June 21st, but early voting starts in mid-May. So we really need to get the word out. And I'm just going to plug, we really do need funds. I want to get, we want to put a down payment on a headquarters. We have a site, want to do some mailers, want to make our team robust. So every amount helps, as you said.
Thank you so much, Ally, for being with us. I really appreciate it. I'll send you this
Juliana.
video, and you can send it to your people so they can get to know you.
Will do. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. You're watching act.tv. We'll be right back. All right. That was good. I enjoyed that tremendously. I enjoyed having Ben Dixon on. It was really weird because I didn't know he was going to be here. I tried to confirm, and there was a problem with getting a hold of him because, as you know, he was out in Florida and an area where apparently the internet is not working so good right at this moment. So that was pretty awesome headline segment. Really enjoyed that. And then, I mean, just imagine what the world would be like if we have people like Ally, and there are a lot of them, running for Congress and winning those seats. And I think it's possible. I know it's possible. A very blue district. So go and support her. It's going to be awesome. We have another candidate running from right down the street from where I live, a progressive campaign against a corporate Democrat. His name is Muad Hezri. He's going to be on the program on Thursday. Remember, this show is on Tuesdays and Thursdays right here, wherever you are watching it. What else? Does anything else need to be said? I'm sure there is. Take it easy, you guys. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. Let the love flow start at home. I'll see you Thursday. Thanks for watching.